Oh, I came to Japan a long time ago, 1985, which is 36 years ago. And that was a very short notice. I was working for Adia, which is today Adecco. And in 1985, they wanted to get into the Japanese market ahead of the temporary staffing law coming into effect about a year later. So I came here supporting a Swiss director that had come from head office, and the two of us came over and we opened the first 4 offices of what today is Adecco, which is one of the largest, say one of the top 10 agencies in Japan. So that was my first contact with Japan and related to the recruitment industry. Well, it's interesting. There was a placement market, but there wasn't really a temporary staffing market because in theory it was illegal. So what you had, the only way to operate in those days was that you had a room full of people doing work, let's say desktop publishing or secretarial staff, and somebody had to go and instruct them what to do on behalf of the client. So it was almost like contract work rather than temporary staffing. And I remember the first brochure that we created, we put a chart in with like a wave, and we were showing you have peak requirements and then you have requirements where you don't really need that many staff. And we were saying you can fill in that gap with temporary staff. So we had to explain in those days what the concept of temporary staffing was. Oh, huge change. So again, we were having to explain even to potential job seekers what temporary work was, as opposed to today. People are very familiar with the concept. So, and in those days, temporary staffing was really much a minority requirement, where it's changed enormously. And it was also interesting because I'd come from the UK and I'd worked in London, where temporary staffing was being used to top up companies' requirements. I mean, things like the secretary was off sick, receptionist was off sick. Literally, I get a phone call on a Monday morning saying, send me a receptionist for the week. And I'd have to find somebody to fill that position. In Japan, it was quite different because they were longer assignments, even in the beginning. And so it was a slightly different approach. The other thing that was very different, and that still remained the same, was that I came from an environment in the UK where employment agencies were, and still, are kind of like a real estate agency. So they're on the street level and people will wander in with no appointment to talk about getting a job. And then when we came to Japan and we were putting offices on the 4th floor, the 9th floor, like here, I was blown away, like, wow, this is so professional. You have to make an appointment to look for a job. So it was a very different approach. So from day one in Japan, there was a level of professionalism that was quite different from the UK. Yeah, so I came to Japan, then I went to the US for a couple of years, and then I came back to Japan in 1990. And I worked a little bit in the consulting field for a medical doctor that I'd met in the US. And then in 1993, decided it was time to start my own business. And I'd remembered in the UK, when I was working for Adia in the UK, that we had a specialist division that was focused on what in those days was word processing. And so I decided if I start an agency focused on a specific subject, and in those days it was desktop publishing, graphic design, that maybe we could establish a niche market for ourselves. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I mean, I never imagined being here at that time. So between 1993 and 2006, I ran my own business, and we were operating a very similar kind of business to Acorn. In fact, on occasions we were probably competing, but it was kind of friendly competition. And then I got out of the industry, and when I went back to the UK for 7 years. When I came back in 2019, somebody in Acorn found me and said, hey, would you be interested in running Acorn for us? We need a country manager. And the offer, the opportunity was too tempting to resist. Yeah, of course, there was no pandemic at that time. Everybody was coming into the office. The idea of remote working was something that was kind of being talked about, but wasn't being thought about that seriously. And Yeah, the business was doing well. So then I think the big difference now is that most of my staff spend a large part of the week working from home. And then they come into the office at particular days of the month or particular days of the week to interact with each other or to get certain tasks done that they need to be in the office to do. So that's a really big change, is that I'm managing a group of people that are typically not in the office anymore. My observation has been that we as a company have had to be a lot more open-minded, flexible, trusting of the people that work for us, that they're getting the job done during the day when they're at home. And then even coming to the office, we used to expect people to be in the office before around about 9 o'clock, and they'd typically be here to at least 6 and beyond. But now, because of people giving people that sense of safety, coming into the office at times when they feel the trains are not so crowded, people tend to come in at odd times of the day. On the whole, they're here typically by about 10 to 11, and then they've headed off about 6-ish, maybe 7 on occasions. So there's a lot more flexibility and a lot more understanding in the company that because of the way society is operating at the moment, we can't make specific requests that you have to be in the office for a certain number of days or a certain number of hours. So we have 4 offices. We have the office here in Tokyo, where I'm talking to you from, in the middle of Aoyama. It's a fantastic location. Been here for about 10 years. And we have an office in Nagoya, Osaka, and Fukuoka. And we've got teams of people spread out in those offices. They do a combination of things, actually, because we're doing placement and we're doing temporary staffing. And we recently started a studios business where we take creative projects, things like websites, social media, e-commerce, and we produce a product for the client, or a finished product. But the offices, they tend to develop their own business locally, but at the same time, there's a lot of collaboration between our agents to help each other fill positions. So sometimes we have people in Tokyo that are interested to move to Fukuoka. So Tokyo agents will then collaborate with their Fukuoka colleagues to fill those positions, and vice versa. We have fabulous clients. We have some of the fastest growing technology companies in Japan, domestic and global. And we have venture companies as well that started only recently, but they're maybe in gaming, they're in technology development. Some clients these days developing metaverse activities, a lot of e-commerce related as well. The emphasis is to find clients that we think are candidates, job seekers are going to be super interested in working for. And on the whole, the companies we work with are highly attractive. I think for our clients, and it's reflected in our own activities, is finding good people. So finding great, talented job seekers, that's a challenge at all times. The other challenge that our clients have is that many job seekers are getting multiple job offers. So it's very much a candidate-driven market. And it means that employers have to create a working environment and conditions that are attractive. The interesting thing, I haven't seen a huge amount of wage inflation, despite the shortage of people, but there's a certain competitiveness about job content, the ability to learn new skills in that company, and maybe the attractiveness of some of the benefits. And very importantly, two important things with younger people is work-life balance and the vision of the company. Where is the company going? Where does the president of the company want to take the business? I think it's really important to enjoy what you're doing. I think Steve Jobs said, if you look in the mirror and for more days than you like in a row, you really don't think you're doing the right job, or you don't really want to go to work, then you're in the wrong job. And in Aquin, we expect results, and we're revenue and profit oriented, but at the same time, we want our staff to be really content, happy, and to enjoy the working environment they're in when they come to the office, and that working from home should be as comfortable as possible, and that they enjoy what they're doing. So we try and find people to work for us that have an interest or passion in creativity, because we're focused on the creative digital marketing sectors, and therefore an interest in those subjects, experience in it is even better, is something that we look for. It's an interesting sector because it's changing all the time, it's evolving all the time. And since the pandemic, a lot of our clients and a lot of the newer clients that we work with have seen the importance of a very strong online presence. And therefore the need for digital staff, UI, UX positions, for example, are in big demand. And that makes life interesting because you're constantly talking about new technology, new trends. So for people that like to be on the kind of the cutting edge, I think we're an interesting company to work for. So we believe we can naturally grow. I think organically we will grow. I'm not sure we need to be in additional markets. We were years ago in Sapporo, but we haven't been there for a long time. But I think the 4 markets that we're operating in, we will look at growing our business in those markets. Each city has something going on. So for example, Fukuoka has Tenjin Big Bang starting now, where they're developing downtown Fukuoka, so that will lead to opportunities. Osaka 2020 has Osaka Expo, and Tokyo's always, there's something going on, and Nagoya Toyota continues to do well, and we do a lot of business with companies that are affiliated to Toyota's business. So I think each city has very positive growth prospects. So when I ran my own business here, we had kind of one big office in Tokyo, but that meant that we focused almost exclusively on Tokyo. I think there are benefits having offices around the country. We do have one lady at the moment working for us in Nara, who's working basically 100% remote, but supporting our clients in Tokyo because she's completely bilingual, she's got experience in the industry. We have a lot of foreign clients here, so that language skill has great value. But she works most of the time from home. Sometimes she pops into our Osaka office because it's nearby, and then occasionally comes here. But it's possible now to accept the concept that somebody doesn't really need to be in any of the cities that we operate in to do business in those cities. But I think as a base and for local businesses, knowing that we have a local presence with, say, a management team and a local staff that understand or come from that area, I think that's a big plus. So I have a big passion for cars. So I've organised the odd small car event on a Sunday morning. I've been on a few rallies. This time of year I love skiing in the winter, and sometimes I do fencing. Actually, before the pandemic I was doing fencing, go to the gym. So I keep myself pretty occupied, and I socialise a lot. I have a lot of friends that I like to meet and talk, and that's extremely stimulating as well. I think that keeps the mind active and maybe keeps you kind of young at heart as well. So I think we pay well, so base salary is good. I've always had the philosophy that people should be paid a salary where they can cover all their living expenses and have a bit left over, have a bit of good fun, have a bit of a good time. And in addition to that, we have attractive bonus plans so that people that are high achievers can earn more than a base salary. That we put people under a certain degree of pressure, but not massive pressure. We treat everybody like an adult, so they're expected to be somewhat self-motivated and get on with the job and achieve the results they're expected to achieve by going about things the way they think is appropriate. So people are not micromanaged here. They're not put under massive pressure. And if they have 2 or 3 bad months, then we do our best to support them. In addition, we started last year some quite intense training within the company and outside as well. And I think that's had a positive effect on building people's personal ability, skill levels, and just giving people more confidence. Definitely anything related to web activity. We've seen a huge increase in UI, UX positions, web analysts, for example, digital marketing managers, directors, digital marketing specialists, people with some knowledge of e-commerce as well, and then designers that kind of understand how to design for a digital world. So that's been a big increase. I think it was happening naturally. The pandemic has accelerated that requirement. We of course, traditionally we were well known as graphic design, suppliers of graphic designers and desktop publishing, for example. And we still have clients that know we do that and call upon us to do that. We've got a few clients recently asking for videography and video specialists, people that can edit, people that can direct video as well. So there's a rise in that area as well. Yeah, in Aquin, interesting, we're probably about 50-50. It's pretty much on a par, male, female. And from an age point of view, we tend to span from late 20s to early 40s. I'm the exception, so but I reckon I'm as young at heart as some of my younger staff. But we really practice what we preach, so we try to be diversified. We have a couple of other foreign staff working for us. We're happy to employ non-Japanese with good Japanese language skills. And yeah, for women in the company, there's great opportunities to progress. It's a matter of ability rather than age or gender. That's the priority, is how skillful you are. So there's a huge similarity in the culture and the values that we have here in Japan and the US have. I think the main difference since the pandemic started is that we've continued to operate a kind of hybrid, well, we've created a hybrid system working in the office and working from home. Whereas in the US, a lot of the offices have either closed or the staff are working from home and rarely, if ever, go into the office. So that's a difference. In Japan, I think where a work culture, people like to be together and to have the chance to interact spontaneously. We've tried to keep that going by allowing the offices a lot of flexibility as to when they come into the office, how frequently and how many of the whole team come in at the same time. So that's probably a big difference.